Hi all, it's Neo Rambler here on another audio video on ramblings about the video game world. I haven't done one for quite a while because the last one I did, which was also my first video for this channel, was PewDiePie censoring his comments section because of people just spamming it with stuff that was irrelevant to what his thoughts and feelings were on the games he was playing. In other words, he didn't believe his bro people were, or his subscribers were there to actually comment on his videos in the way that he wanted them to. So yeah, but anyway, that's all done and dusted. I've given my thoughts and feelings on that. But what I want to talk about now is the ending and my thoughts on the plot and indeed Half-Life 2 as a game overall. Now that I've finished it on my Let's Play channel, because initially I was a bit shocked by the ending, and I didn't like it. And I said that, and I made a mockery of what the developers were thinking of at the time, when they decided to go ahead with that ending and the plot ending and all that stuff. And then after that, and I put the videos up, I've read some of your comments on it, and how some of you have said, oh, it's still a really good plot, and you've missed out on loads of stuff that you weren't paying attention on and what have you, and you should play it again and pick up stuff, and you've still got episodes 1 and 2 to go through that will help, carry on with the story. And I acknowledge that. I've read the comments and acknowledged what you said and all that. And I've also read the plot to Half-Life 2 on Wikipedia. I know it's not the most reliable source in the world, but I just read the plot only for Half-Life 2. I don't know what happens in episode 1 and 2. I've just read the plot for Half-Life 2. So then I've got a better understanding on what was going on and all that. And if there was any critical bits I've missed where I think, oh, I didn't get that properly, or oh, I didn't understand that properly, or oh, right, I completely missed that, that kind of thing. And after doing all that, after acknowledging your comments and reading the plot on Wikipedia, I still am not that impressed with Half-Life 2's ending and all the plot. I actually think it's pretty lazy and pretty, well, meh. Is the best way to put it, really. I wouldn't personally critically acclaim it. Now, I will say, just to get some positives out first, I will say that as the game on its own as a piece of coding is a fantastic game, and I mean that by saying that I believed that the mechanics of the game were brilliant, the functionality of the game was brilliant, even though I had a few problems with my hard disk drive on it, and some of the loading sequences took a while. Um, I suppose that's probably its biggest flaw, really, when it comes to the design of the game, but not enough to really turn around and say, "Oh, well, this is just a load of rubbish." Um, it was something I was okay to put up with. But yeah, in terms of the design of the game and the graphics and the gameplay mechanics and the shooting mechanics, the AI and how intelligent they were, the atmosphere of the game, the animations of the characters when they were interacting with you and all that. All of that I thought was really well done. I thought Valve did a fantastic job on that. I thought the game as a piece of coding, and still do think, by the way, that the game as a piece of coding deserves to be critically acclaimed, and it still in 2015 stands up today. I think as a game for its mechanics and its playability overall, it's really really good. So I'm impressed with all the stuff that Valve put into it with regards to the gameplay and the game and the graphics and the AI and all that. I really do like that, and it is impressive. And I agree with the critics and the players who have acclaimed it for that, that it should be critically acclaimed for that. It really, really is good. Really smoothed out compared to the first game. The first game and its mechanics, they really did a polished up job on it. They really polished it up, and it felt really good to play. And it was really good to play. Yes, it got frustrating at times, and there were bits where I was like, "What, really?" But all games are going to have that. It wasn't enough for me to dampen my entire experience on it. It was still a really good game in terms of design. And like I said, the only major criticism was just some of the loading screens took a long time. But I can accept that. It's one of those problems where it doesn't take away from the fact the game is still a really really good piece of coding. So that I agree with and still do. But the plot again, I can't I can't be with the people who say it's great and critically acclaim it. I really can't. And the ending was pretty much what tipped me over the edge a bit, because I honestly felt and still do feel like it was a bit of a cop out, like as if Valve really didn't know where to go with this, and then just thought, okay, well, we'll just get G-Man to come in, say thank you, and boom, he's off. The end. We'll just do it there. And it didn't feel very satisfying to me. It didn't feel like I'd achieved anything. It certainly just felt like as if Valve ran out of time, or felt like as if they just cut it, or just had to rush that bit to get the game out. And after reading a bit about its development history, I believe in that a bit more. The development between Half-Life 1 and the release of Half-Life 2 was 5 years. And apparently it cost them up to $40 million on average, probably give or take a few million. I don't know the exact figure, but it was about that. I know for a fact that not all of that money was spent purely on building the game. A lot of that money would have been spent on marketing. A lot of that money probably would have been spent on making Steam, because Half-Life 2 was the first game with Steam when Steam came out, and you had to register to Steam in order to play Half-Life 2 when it first came out. So some of that money would have been spent on Steam, and marketing, as I said, and advertising, and probably other aspects. So I would have imagined up to a third of that money was probably spent on developing the game, coding it, and all that. I might be wrong. That's just a guess. I don't know. Maybe there is an exact figure out there that actually states how much they did spend developing the game, but I'd imagine something like that. Either way, it cost them a lot of money to develop. And from how good the gameplay and the graphics and the AI and all that I've listed before in the positive section is, I can see where the money was spent. It certainly was spent on making the game as polished as possible. And I think because of that, and they spent so much time and effort on that, I think the plot was sort of sidelined a bit. Like they had a general plot in their head as they were developing the game. It wasn't as if they were just developing the game purely as a technical showpiece and then fit the plot around it. I'm sure they had a plot to fit around the game. Sorry, they had a plot for the game to fit around in. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if I don't know if they had it fully thought out. They thought, well, we've got this for now. We'll go with this plot for now and these details. We'll put the effort on the game, make sure the game plays as well as possible, and then when we get to that stage where we have to resolve the rest of the plot, we should have thought of something by then. And I don't think they did, or at least not enough anyway. And probably with their other commitments with Steam and marketing and all that, yeah, I think it's just one of those elements where they knew that after 5 years they had to get the game out because it was costing them that much money. They had to get the game out. They had to launch Steam out to get their money back and hopefully make a profit. Um, and I believe because of that, they rushed the ending a bit. Um, And I know a lot of you said in the comments that I missed a lot of stuff out as well when I was playing the game in terms of the plot. I missed a lot of things happening in the background, or I missed or didn't hear properly a lot of the conversations going on between characters, and I didn't notice things happen or see people in the background. Apparently, the G-Man was in the background a few times. I never saw him in the background once. I don't think. I think Arctic Wolf said that actually. He said, "Oh, you've missed so many things out of the background. It's unreal." Unlike when I was playing the first game, Half-Life 1, I noticed quite a bit going on in the background. So why I didn't notice so much going on in Half-Life 2, I don't know, is the honest answer to that, really. But there you go, it happened. But I think that's one of the biggest problems I have with the plot, aside from it feeling or me believing that it felt like it was rushed a bit or a bit chopped out or a bit sort of, oh, well, we'll just stick with that for now and then we'll resolve it later with episodes 1 and 2. Um, I believe that they tried to be too clever with the narrative because, again, in the first game, some of the plot points and plot devices was in the background of the game as you were playing it, because the plot to Half-Life 1 was pretty basic. You were a scientist, well, you are a scientist, and you are doing an experiment as part of your work. It goes wrong. All these weird things start happening where these alien things start appearing out of nowhere. They seem to have just teleported there. They start taking over people and turning them into vagina monster zombies. And then there's other aliens as well that are on their own, just causing stuff to go wrong and all that, and killing people and making things go wrong. And you, as a scientist, have to go and stop this. Well, not necessarily stop it, but you want to escape. You want to get out. You think, "Oh God, it's all gone wrong. Right, we need to escape and get help, basically." And that's fine. It works because you're a scientist. You're with the scientists. The scientists say, "Right, we need to get out of here. We need to survive. We need to escape. We need to get help. We need to stop this. We need to, you know, save ourselves." And you've got a motive to do that because you're a scientist. You're with them. You are one of them, and that's a good plan. You think, "Yeah, if I was a scientist, then good plan. Let's do it." Okay, it all fell on you in the end to do it, but the scientists were sort of helping in the background as much as they could to help you progress. You just probably because you were wearing that suit, or maybe you were younger than a lot of the scientists. A lot of the scientists there were quite old. Maybe because you were one of the younger ones, you were just the better choice for all the combat you'd have to do, all the obstacles you had to overcome to get to where you needed to get to. You were just the better choice. And whereas the other scientists were saying, "Well, we know more about the stuff going on. We'll help you get there," and all that MacGuffin, which they did. As well as a lot of them being wiped out very easily by the head crabs when they latched onto their face and turned them into vagina monsters and all that. Yeah, it made sense. And the things that were happening in the background complemented the plot, but not in a way where it was essential to the plot. It wasn't. You didn't need to notice these things going on in the background to get and fully understand what was going on. All you had in your head was you had to get from A to B, and that was all that mattered, and get help. And that's fine. That's decent enough plot. If that's all you need as a basic plot, that's great, and it worked. But if you did notice these things in the background, it complemented the plot in a small way. It made you wonder something else was going on, or some this G-man that was following you about. Who the hell is he? We saw him at the beginning. He's always in the background. What's his beef? Why is he there? It didn't make you clueless to the plot, but it did add that extra element. It was like a side plot, a subplot that happened in the background, and it was very clever. And then when you did get to the end, and you found out that when you did get to B, from A to B, the actual the Lambda complex, sorry, within the Black Mesa complex, and the scientists went, right, okay, well, look, this is what's been going on. We've been experimenting with this science to get, to just try and go into this other dimension, Zen or whatever. And the reason why it's gone wrong is because now we've created these portal links where these aliens are just coming flooding in. We've got no control of it now. We need to stop it. We need you to go into Zen to stop these portals from being created so we can get control of the situation again. That's a good revelation. You think, oh, they knew they were experimenting on this and they knew they got wrong, and you've got to go over there now to stop it. Oh, that's quite scary. And then you do, and you go over there and you stop it with the boss fight and all that. And it was really cool when you go to Zen. It was a proper like, wow, this is Christ, this is a really creepy place, And you stop the boss. Sorry, you stop the boss. You stop the problem. You fight the boss at the end, and you kill him. And then there was the subplot as well with the Vortigaunts as well. The Vortigaunts were actually enslaved throughout the game as well. They were fighting you, but they had these collars around their necks, and it turns out that the thing you were fighting at the end had enslaved them on Zen. So that was interesting. But that was a subplot. It wasn't critical to you understanding what you had to do, but it was just there as that extra underlayer, that extra onion layer of plot. And then you save it, and then G-Man comes out of nowhere at the end, reveals himself to you, and he gives you that twist ending. Well, not the twist ending, sorry, but he gives you that the cliffhanger ending. Oh, right, well done, Gordon. You've done all this. You've done exactly what you wanted to do. Now go under my services, and we'll use you for next time. So, it came out of left field, and as an ending, you're like, what the hell was that? But you had the satisfying feeling that you'd still accomplished something because you carried out the plot in the game anyway. That bit at the end with G-Man added on was added on, and it was added on perfectly. And I thought, cool, I liked the story of Half-Life 1. I did. I really liked the story. I thought it was good. But in this game, in Half-Life 2, you didn't have that initial beginning feeling of, right, I know what I need to do, and yes, I'm siding with you because in this game, G-Man drops you off in City 17. He says you're the right man for the wrong time, giving you some cryptic stuff where you're like, okay, fine, right, well, all right, I'll see what I can do. You've also got that time gap problem where it's been 20 years since there's been a 20-year gap since what happened in the first game and where you are now in the second game, and you've got to fill yourself in on that, thinking, okay, well, I'm here now, everything's all gone to pot, what's going on? So you've got to build that all up in your head. Then you're dumped into a scenario where the place that you're in is sort of run by a totalitarian state. There's these weird combine forces that you're like, okay, who the hell are you? Right, where did you come from? You've got the man on the TV screen, Dr. Breen, sort of going, right, yes, well, everything's as it is, and this is all for human survival and evolution, and just keep doing what you're doing. It's all, I know it's painful and know it's rubbish, but it's all going to pay off at the end, and he appears to be this, this dictator guy with power, and that was a good beginning. But you weren't on anybody's side. You were just thrown in. You weren't on the people's side with the blue suits on and the rebel side, and you weren't on Dr. Breen's side and the Combine side. You were just thrown into a situation, and you had to resolve it. So unlike the first game where you had an incentive to do what the scientists asked you to do because you were one of them, in this case you didn't. So you think, okay, well that's fine. That doesn't mean that the plot's bad or anything. No, of course not. It just meant that okay, you've got to do that extra work to clue yourself in, which is fine. And I thought the beginning of the game for Half-Life 2 was a great setup. It was a good setup for an interesting plot, because you wanted to know, well, who are these Combine? Why are they doing what they're doing and beating people up and seem to be running things around? And why is it the humans are scared and living in these desolate conditions? And why has everything gone to pot? And what is that giant building in the middle of City 17? Who is this Dr. Breen on the television screen and all that MacGuffin? And then you meet the rebels, and then they're like, "Oh, you're Gordon. Oh, we know about you. We know you from the first game. Oh, you're a savior. Oh, brilliant. Yes, yes. Come with us. Come with us. You're on our side now." And you're like, "Okay, fine. Why? Okay, who are you? Why are you rebelling? What's going on?" You're completely clueless. Um, and uh, and that's the whole game, really. It's just you just you just side with the rebels. You just with the rebels. The rebels just pick you up, and you're with the rebels. And it makes sense because the Combine go against you and try to kill you and stop you and all that. So you sort of think, okay, well, I probably would side with the rebels because at least they're not trying to kill me, whereas the Combine are. Okay, fair enough. So you've, in a way, the game does give you a side, but it kind of pushes you into it, which I suppose is fine. But then you want to know, okay, rebels, you're rebelling against what's going on. Tell me what's going on and why are you rebelling? Give me all this information. And they never do. They just assume that you are the savior and they just want to rush you through to Eli Vance, or whoever, so then that you can save them. I think when you meet Eli Vance for the first time, he clues you in a bit about what's going on and all that. I actually can't remember now. But I think he does a little bit. So he does say, "Oh well, the Combine are bad and all that stuff, and we've got to stop them." And you think, "Oh, okay, fair enough." But not enough information for you to fully understand what's going on. And then, but enough, I suppose, enough for you to sort of think, "Oh, okay, they're bad. You're the good guys. We've got to carry on." But you've also got Dr. Breen constantly taunting you throughout the game, going, "Gordon, you're doing everything wrong. Why is it that you're siding with the rebels? Why aren't you helping the human beings? You are causing the humans to go into death's road. They are going to fail if you keep siding with the rebels. You need to turn yourself in, Gordon. You need to side with us. You have to stop what you're doing." And you're like, "Okay, that's fine, but give me your arguments. Give me your plan. Give me your viewpoint on everything." And he never ever does again. Dr. Breen doesn't do that. He just says that you're doing everything wrong and you're an enemy. But you're like, why? Why? I'm a scientist. Gordon's a scientist. He'll weigh evidence up in his head. You should be allowed to. Well, we'll get to that in a bit. I'll get to where I think the plot should have been. But anyway, you've got that, and then you find out the Vortigaunts are now with the humans, and they've sided with the humans because they're now being enslaved by the Combine. And it turns out that once you'd what you did at Zen freed the Vortigaunts, but they were still annoyed at you because you killed a lot of them to do that. But at the same time, they were fine that you saved them in the end. So they sort of didn't really completely forgive you for killing them, but at the same time, they were happy enough that you saved them. So they're kind of like on neutral ground with you. Um, but you didn't know that unless you found that Vortigaunt in that tunnel place, that radioactive tunnel by the campfire in a cave that I would have completely missed if one of you guys hadn't have mentioned it in the comments. So a critical component of the plot was hidden away from the player the first time he's playing it. I never would have explored that because it was hidden away. Um, and that's one of the biggest problems I have with the plot of Half-Life 2. Too many, or I believe, too many critical plot points to the game was hidden away. The stuff that was hidden in the background was really well hidden, as opposed to the first game where it's hidden, but just enough for you to maybe not notice it, but also just enough for you to actually notice it. You'll notice some of them and you won't notice others in the first game. Whereas in this game, I noticed hardly any of them at all. And the bits they had hidden away were critical plot components. I believe they were, because if I hadn't have met that Vortigaunt with the campfire in the cave, I wouldn't. How was it the Combine were weaponizing the head crabs and the missiles and stuff? How were they doing that? How did they enslave the Vortigaunts? You never would have known. It never would have got resolved. Maybe you could have pieced it up together with other things, maybe, but you never would have. It never would have got resolved. And uh, you could have clued in, I suppose, because the Vortigaunts were were working with the humans, maybe. But you still would have asked questions going, well, why? Why did the Vorticons get enslaved? How did they get enslaved? You know, there's all these questions going on in your head. Um, and I suppose that's the point of it and all that. But I mean, like it was they were too big. They were questions that you needed answers to really get the plot. Unlike the first game, where again the plot was so basic, the extra stuff you got was just a hidden plot. That's all. Like I said, with the first game, there's a subplot and a hidden plot that runs parallel to it. But if you miss it, it's not critically essential for you to not understanding what you need to do. Whereas with this game, they didn't hide a subplot. They hid critical information you needed, and that's what I was a bit annoyed about. So a lot of the stuff that I was asking questions to, you had to really notice stuff going on in the background, or you had to find the right people to listen to the right conversation or whatever to get it, because you naturally ask questions as you're playing the game. All this stuff's happening, and you're like, well, why is it happening? How did they get like this? You are naturally asking these questions. You want them resolved. You're not asking the questions for the hell of it. You want them resolved. And if the game isn't going to make it easy for you to do that, then that's poor writing. That's poor plotting. The game should at least give you those plot points and answers to those questions up front, really, as you're playing the game. So when you do get to the end, you've got everything in your head all summed up. Then it makes the ending a bit more impactful. Uh, but instead of you having to work hard to notice these things, while the fact that you could call it clever and intelligent in terms of plot narration, because it's like, well, we're not going to spoon feed it to you, you're going to work it out yourself. If you like that sort of thing, fine, that's fine. But I do, but only for minor stuff, like in Half-Life 1. Um, and in some movies where there's like little in jokes in the background that you can notice. And one of my favorite TV series of all time, Police Squad, and even the Naked Gun films, they had lots of jokes in the background going on. That's fine. That's clever stuff, because if you miss them, it doesn't matter, because you're still understanding what's going on. They're just things in the background to either make you laugh or just add something extra to the scene, but not enough for it to go, oh, because you've missed that, you're now completely clueless, which is what I felt like half the time while playing this game. And I can admit that I missed out on a lot of stuff that I suppose was actually quite easy to spot. I can admit that I missed out more than the average person would have missed out when they were playing this game the first time. So I will admit that as much as I'm criticizing this aspect of Half-Life's plot design, at the same time, I did miss out on a lot of stuff, or forgot a lot of stuff that um, other people playing the game for the first time wouldn't have done. They would have spotted it far more easily than me. I will admit that. Um, so yeah, before you start, if you've jumped down my throat already, then that's fine. But yeah, I will turn around and put my hands up and go, no, I probably missed a lot of stuff out that other people wouldn't have done so easily. Um, But again, that's not a good thing, because yes, I admit I missed things out, and that was silly of me, but I wouldn't have been the only one who would have done, because you've also got the game to play. You've got the enemies firing stuff at you. The AI was clever. The surprises with the enemies that they threw at you was clever. The vagina monster zombies were much more intelligent. They were a bit stronger, a bit more threatening. The new zombies with the spindly zombies, the running zombies, and the spindly head crabs and all that, and all the jump scares they put in. You're on edge all the time as you're playing the game because of Half-Life 1. Because I played Half-Life 1, I was a bit more on edge playing this one, because I didn't want to fall for the same traps. I still did a few times, but my brain at the time was more focused on, right, try not to die loads and loads and loads of times. Try not to get frustrated. Try not to get upset, because this game is challenging. This game is hard, and it will throw stuff at you. So I was concentrating like hell to not trying not to get caught out. And the jump scares they did put in there and all that, and the enemies they put in there were tougher. They were smarter, they were cleverer, and they could get you. The game was balanced out in a way by the fact that unlike the first game where it was insanely hard as the game progressed onwards, in this game it was actually quite straightforward. It was quite easy. They threw lots and lots and lots of supplies at you. Admittedly, I played the game on normal mode, and I played the first game on normal mode as well. So I played both of them on normal mode. But the normal mode in Half-Life 2 is a lot easier than the normal mode in Half-Life 1, because they threw tons of supplies at you. But be that as it may, I was still on edge. I'd still try not to get caught out, because I didn't want to. It's horrible. But again, I was immersed. That's the extra thing about the gameplay design from the first game. If you played the first game and were playing this one, you would be on edge, which is good. But because of that, I didn't have the extra brain capacity to pay attention to the rest of the plot sometimes because I was on edge. And if you're going to put critical plot points in that, you've got to be one sharp person to pick it up first time playing it. You've got to be the most perceptive, intelligent, calm, rational person playing first person shooter games, especially ones that can be as frustrating as Half-Life, to pick that up. And if you are, good for you. I mean that. Seriously, good for you. Well done. But I know for a fact that most gamers aren't that way. I'm not saying that most gamers aren't dumb or anything. I'm not trying to insult you by saying that. I'm just saying, like, just from experience alone, gamers just play games. That we. No, I'd actually no, I won't go that far because I'm probably insulting a lot of your intelligences. No, I'll retract that statement. What I'll say instead is that I'm not a clever gamer. There you go. That's better. I'll single myself out as not being that perceptive a gamer, and I know I'm not the only one like that. There's a lot of us who are like that, and maybe the game just wasn't designed for people like me. That's fine. But yeah, as a result of that, yeah, I can't critically acclaim it for that, if you know what I mean. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I missed, and I know that I can turn around and say I missed it or didn't understand it. But that's to me is not the element of a good plot, and because of that, I couldn't get immersed into it that well either. So even though the setup was good, I just felt as the game progressed, it wasn't going anywhere. Well, it was going towards the rebels fighting against the Combine, but I wasn't attached to it. I felt very unattached throughout it, and that was probably the point. Because, like I said, Gordon was thrown into it. He's not one of the rebels. 20 years have gone past, and Gordon's joined the rebels. He's not relating to them or anything. He's just been thrown in there by G-Man. That's the point. But as a result of that, you've really got to pay attention because of that. And I thought, as a way of driving the plot, it's difficult. It's certainly different. It's very different, and I think that's one of the main reasons why Half-Life was 2 was critically acclaimed for its plot because it was being different. It was being a bit more demanding of the player to get it, which is gutsy and challenging, but not necessarily a good thing. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, and then you go through the game, and then you get to the fight at the end when you're back in City 17, and you're um, fighting the Combine and all that, and that was all good. So I said, well, that section was good. It was intense. It was strong. It was good. It was involving. Bit weird in some places, and okay, the AI of your rebel companions were not very well programmed, but whatever. You can't get it right every time. But it was a good fight. And then when you got into the Citadel, I loved the Citadel. The Citadel was a brilliant place. It was very, very creepy and scary and gigantic. It was very, very big and awesome. It left you in awe. It was very impactful. And the souped up gravity gun as well was pretty cool as well. Because I didn't like the gravity gun throughout the whole game. I honestly felt it was very gimmicky. But when they souped it up at the end, that also that's probably the only other design thing I didn't like about Half-Life 2 was the gravity gun, because I didn't really relate to it. I thought it was just a nuisance. I thought it was just something you were forced to do it, and it didn't feel for me. It didn't feel like it was a good. It didn't feel like a good mechanic for the most part. It just felt like it was something they put in, and they said, "Oh, we've got to justify this mechanic. We've got to justify this gravity gun." And I honestly didn't feel they justified it well enough. They used it, and you did have to use it, but I found it more of a chore than as a sort of, oh, this is a new toy. I like this new toy. Oh, okay. I didn't relate to the mechanical system of that. I kind of felt it was a bit annoying. Um, but when they souped it up at the end, when you get into the Citadel and they confiscate all your guns, but they can't confiscate the grav gun, then immediately that told me in my head that Valve thought, all right, there's going to be some people who are playing this game that aren't going to like the gravity gun, and we want them to. They were so fixated with the gravity gun, they were trying to justify it, and then at that point they went, "Oh, screw it, just soup it up and turn it into an amazing weapon. They'll love that." And I did love it, but that also told me that Valve were really struggling to justify its use. That's all. Or maybe they thought, maybe perhaps they thought, oh well, we'll reward the player with the souped up gravity gun because they've used the gravity gun throughout the game. We'll reward them with a souped up one just to have fun. Well, they've used it. Even if they've liked it or disliked it, they've used it. Or let them have fun. Either way, I still liked it. I liked the souped up gravity gun. It was really good fun. The corpse party dancey thing I really enjoyed that, and the fact that you could use it against the Combine directly was great. And again, the Citadel was a brilliant place. It was really scary, really daunting, really atmospheric, really well designed, really brilliant. And I like the fact that you didn't see all of it either, because You want to know more. But again, it wasn't critical to the plot. It was critical you got to the Citadel, but it wasn't critical you knew exactly what was going on. The things you did notice, that was when it was going back to Half-Life 1 with the plot. The things you did notice were just little things, but they just added to the whole area. That's what I liked. That Citadel bit was great because it went back to Half-Life 1. The little things you notice added to everything else. All you needed to understand was you had to go in there and find Dr. Breen, and it's the place of the Combine. That's it. But if you notice all these things going on in the background, it just added to the atmosphere, it added to the place, but it wasn't critically essential to understand what you needed to do and why this place was here. But it did add to the whole intimidating factor of it. That was clever. I liked the Citadel section, and yes, it got a bit frustrating when you were going up the elevator of doom and all that, but I was all right with that. You know, it's the final bit of the game, that's fine. Um, so the Citadel was great, but the encounter with Dr. Breen at the end was so disappointing. Because although it was expected that obviously he wasn't going to change his stance and all that, which was fine. The whole taunting bit with him saying, "Oh, Gordon, you've messed everything up" and all that, like I mentioned before, he really starts getting at you again when you get to the Citadel. Um, he never tells you why you're messing things up again. He never ever tells you, and you're like, please tell me why I'm doing that. What is going on? Tell me what is going on, and then I'll make a decision. Okay? And I think that's why I didn't like the ending, because it was a single ending. There was no choice in the ending that you had in Half-Life 1. Although I suppose the ending at the end of Half-Life 1 was a bit gimmicky, I suppose, when it's like, oh, you can choose to be employed with us or not. At least it had two endings. I think in this game it should have done something similar. I think what should have happened was when you get to the end with the ending bit with Dr. Breen and Dr. Mossman and Eli and Alex and you all in the same room, it should have been Dr. Mossman, not Dr. Mossman, sorry, Dr. Breen basically saying to you, right, I have joined the Combine because, and he'd give you the long speech and all that, and maybe even showed you some data, or maybe even showed you some stuff from the Combine. He said the reason why I sided with the Combine, and I think it's good, is because of X, Y, and Z. And yes, you have ruined the plan, but now that you know everything, what are you going to do now? Okay, and yes, it's a bit cliched, I admit, but it's essential. I think it would have made, because it's all building up to this bit anyway. You want to stop him, but you want to know at the same time why is it you've joined him. It's all building up to it. But he doesn't. He just rambles on saying, "Oh, you've ruined everything again, and oh, now you've got to go and tell the rebels to stop what they're doing because you're Gordon. They all believe you're the Messiah. Eli won't do it, so you do it." And then he threatens you to do it by lifting Eli and Alex up to this weird ceiling-like portal transporter thing, as if to say, if you don't do it, then they're going to die or whatever. And I think what should have happened was that at that point, rather than just threaten me to do that, he should have just done it. He should have just, when Eli refuses to do it, he should have lifted both of them up in their things and then zapped them away so they disappeared. And then say, right, well, if you want to see them again, you're going to have to say the speech. So Gordon would have been more implied to do the speech to the rebels to stop them fighting and then all side with the Combine. And then that would have given a bit more incentive for Dr. Mossman to then suddenly betray Dr. Breen, because she clearly has feelings for Eli. Whether they're romantic or not, I'll admit, you can leave that up for debate. But in terms of feelings, she feels strongly for Eli, because throughout the whole game when she reveals she's a traitor and all that, she keeps trying to protect Eli's life. Um, but yeah, that's the point where she should have went, right, that's it, I've had enough, and then go against Dr. Breen, freed you from the thing, and then say, right, go after Dr. Breen and find out what's happened to my Eli. And I'm sorry, Gordon, that I've been doing this. I'm sorry, I thought I was doing the right thing, but I'm wrong. I care too much for Eli, and this man has gone too far. You're right. Look. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just go and stop him. That would have been better. And then you could have gone and chased Dr. Breen throughout the compound, the rest of the compound, the top bit of the compound of the Citadel. And he's got your gravity gun, because remember, he picks up your gravity gun and takes it away from you briefly. He should have then used that against you, because he knows how to use that goddamn gun. I'm sorry, but he knows how to use it. He was watching you use it throughout the Citadel as you were fighting your way up to him through the video links. He knows that you can use it. He knows how to use it. He would have picked it up and gone, okay, he holds it like this. He has the trigger thing. Boom, boom, boom. Right. The fact that he didn't use it at all, or implied that he didn't know how to use it, was just silly. I'm like, dude, you're a scientist. You can figure it out. It has a couple of buttons you press. I mean, all I do is press buttons and things happen. All you have to do is press a couple and then go, oh, right, I press this button, it does this. I press this button, it does that. Right, okay, right, let's go and take out Gordon and let me escape from wherever I need to go. He should have used it against you, which would have been scary then, because then you've got no guns at all. He's stolen your only gun. He's firing at you while he's running away to stop you, and he's creating obstacles, and then you'd have to go through them and chase him and all that. And then he gets to his portal area, that reactor bit where he's trying to teleport away, and then he should be shooting at you with the grav gun, and then obviously the Combine starts shooting you. And what should have happened was you should have been, without any gun, just climbing your way up the platform, dodging all the bullets and stuff. So it is difficult, but you're desperate because you want to stop him and you want to find out what's happened to Alex and Eli. Get to the portal where he's firing at you, and then both of you get portal to the Combine area or the Zen area or whatever, and then have a final showdown with Dr. Breen, and just sort of like Dr. Breen drops his gravity gun, like the Combine mutate him or whatever, and he, I don't know, turns into a monster or he does something. Have your final showdown with him with the gravity gun, and you have the big boss fight, and then you find Eli and Alex or whatever there or near there, you free them, and then have that moment where they're freed and you think you've saved everything. Then you have the moment where G-Man come in and take you away and put you back into stasis. Job's done. Leaving you hanging thinking, well, what happened to Alex and Eli? Did they get out of the Combine okay? Are they going to survive? What happened to Dr. Mossman? Did we win? That would have been better. And when you were back with the decision to make the speech or not to the rebels, when I said, we'll have either, with Dr. Breen just threatening Alex and Eli to die, or whether he has zapped them, like I insinuated earlier, because he's given you the argument for, he should have given you the argument for why he sided with the Combine. It should have given you an option then to pick to side with the Combine and Dr. Breen and make the speech and get the bad ending, or get the good ending and finish the game by siding with the rebels. Because that would have been clever then, because you would have then it would have been intelligent. Because it said, look, if you want to end the game that way, you can do, and you're justified to do it because you've got the evidence. And then if you think, no, I'm not going to do that, no, of course not, then you go and chase after him and then have the ending with G-Man at the end. Either way, it would have been a bit more of a conclusive plot, another standalone plot where, okay, it ends with G-Man putting you in stasis and insinuating there's something bigger going on, but then that would have led to the third game, if the third game is ever going to come out, and still contribute to the grand narrative. But instead, with the ending of Half-Life 2, it honestly felt like a middle game. It felt like as if you're just playing it to get to the next game. Really, that's it. It doesn't have a self-resolving plot at the end, apart from the explosion at the end. I suppose you could argue is self-fulfilling enough, but because you stopped Dr. Breen at the very least, but then you doomed Alex and stuff. It just didn't feel very satisfying. It didn't feel like an epic showdown or anything. It felt really rushed and really cliched. It didn't feel very groundbreaking at all. Well, not groundbreaking, that's too far, but it didn't feel very satisfying. That's the ultimate conclusion. It just felt rushed. I mean, you had the portal open up above him, or at least a fragment of the portal, and you could see above that there was some other dimension out there. Was that Zen? Was that where the Combine lived? I don't know. It had that. So I think that's what was going to happen. I think you were going to go into the portal, get transported there, and have some final confrontation there. But I think I think Valve legitimately ran out of time and stopped it. And that is just. I'm sorry, but that's just poor writing. That's just poor plot. That is just poor. It's just poor. It's cheap. And that's why I don't think the plot was that good, really. I think the first game's plot was, but I think they tried to make it too complex, really, and too intelligent. And I think that's why. And I think then it comes down to either you love it. It's one of those plots where you either love it or you hate it. Well, not necessarily in terms of the content of the plot, but in terms of how the plot was told to you. You either love it or you hate it. And I think the plot itself was pretty standard, but okay, I'm fine with that. Like I said, the Half-Life 1's plot was pretty basic, but it worked. And this plot was a bit more complex and probably a bit cliched, but again, it would work if it's executed well. I'm not asking for originality because it's difficult to do originality, and sometimes even pretentious. But at least at least it should have been a bit more meatier. That's all. I think there should have been more stuff going on and have some more deep stuff in it, some more plot points added in to you and spoon fed to you, as opposed to you having to find them or notice them. And again, the ending was just poor. I really didn't like the ending. It was just poor. Not because Alex was going to die maybe in the explosion or that's fine, but it was just a very anticlimactic fight. And if that was meant to be done on purpose, I just don't feel satisfied by that. I think that is just poor. That's not intelligent. That's not clever. That's just lazy. But we have still got episodes 1 and 2 to play. And from what I've heard from you guys commenting on it, it does carry on the ending. And that's another problem I have as well, is when developers choose to expand on the main game's ending of something. You pay 40 or 50 quid for the game back in the day to play it. you don't get a complete ending, and then you have to pay more for DLC to get the ending. That's very cheeky. That's very naughty. I don't like that business practice. Yes, it's all about making profit and money, and yes, of course, the extended development costs that was put into Half-Life 2, perhaps they were forced to do that to make more money out of it, to make a profit. You know, I can understand if that was the case. I can understand Valve doing that, but from a consumer's perspective, that's just not on. You shouldn't do that. Full stop. If you pay full price for a brand new game, you expect a full game. And there's a lot, and it's not just Valve who've done that with Half-Life 2. They've done Ubisoft did it with a couple of games, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. I know for a fact that there's been examples of it. I said Grand Theft Auto 4 did that as well. Grand Theft Auto 4 did it with the main game. When you bought the main game and you played the main game, and it had a lot of plot points in it that weren't resolved. The ending was really rubbish. It's similar to this, where just nothing. It was just like, right, that's it, that's the end, and you get nothing out of it, and you're like, oh, well, that was a bit lackluster. And then they brought out the DLC, the Ballad of Gay Tony and the Lost and the Damned, and that actually resolved some of the plot points. But you had to pay more money for it, and you think to yourself, that's just cheeky because if I'm paying full money for a game, I expect a full game. But that's a different argument. But yeah, yeah, overall, Half-Life 2's plot didn't really. It's not a bad plot. It is not a bad plot, but it's not a critically acclaimable plot. That's all I'm saying. I think the only way that I can personally make it work in my head and actually find it interesting and find it quite intelligent is if you compare it to H.P. Lovecraft's work. Because his H.P. Lovecraft wrote a load of short stories that were all based on the weird and the paranormal and the supernatural. I'm sure you know this, but if you don't, that's what he did. And a lot of his stories had weird stuff like this going on, where there was something going on bigger than what the human mind could understand, and there were all these weird creatures and aliens and things going on in other universes and in other dimensions that infringe upon ours, where you don't fully understand what's going on, but it's scary as hell. It's creepy, and in his short stories, when where it happens and these endings happen where there is something going on that's weird and supernatural, it doesn't resolve them. It just leaves it on a cliffhanger. And those were fine because they were short stories, and I liked those. And I think in my head, actually, when I look back on the plot for Half-Life 2 and even Half-Life 1, it has a very H.P. Lovecraft feel to it. This whole supernatural, paranormal, well, not paranormal, but supernatural, sorry, feel to these games. Yeah, it works quite well as that. And I think Half-Life 2's plot works really well as a H.P. Lovecraft story because the ending isn't resolved. Again, it probably is resolved in episodes 1 and 2, but as a standalone game, yeah, it's just like a small weird tale where these bigger things are happening, with G-Man being the critical component of this otherworldly bigger thing that you can't understand malarkey going on. As a H.P. Lovecraft story or a Lovecraftian tale, it really does work, and I think that's the only way that I can honestly look at the plot and go, okay, if I look at it from that angle, it works really, really well. I don't know if that's what they intended. I don't know if that's what other people have thought in their heads. But as a Lovecraftian tale, it's quite a good one. A big one, mind you, much bigger than what H.P. Lovecraft would have written himself, but it's got all the elements of a H.P. Lovecraft story to it. And I think from that angle, it's pretty good. It's a good Lovecraftian tale, and I like H.P. Lovecraft. So I think as a H.P. Lovecraft style story or style plot, it certainly does. I think then it's better. I think that's. I think I would. I think I'm more inclined to like it more now, thinking about it from that angle. I don't know if other people think of it at that angle, but that's to me makes it work. I think, yeah, I do. I think as a Lovecraftian tale, it works really well. So actually, yeah, thinking about it, that does make the plot work a little bit better in its favour. So, oh well, there you go. I found a way to understand it and like it, I suppose. Maybe slightly different and unorthodox from what other people are thinking about. But yeah, actually, generally looking back in on it now, yeah, it has a lot of elements of H.P. Lovecraft, and I think that's a good thing because I love H.P. Lovecraft. It's good stuff. Um, and yeah, I think it works well like that, and in a way, actually makes it out to be a little bit more of a standalone game. Who'd have thunk it? After nearly 45 minutes of rambling, I've finally concluded that if I look at the plot from a H.P. Lovecraft perspective, it's actually really good. So, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. A very slow roundabout that takes 45 minutes to go round, but hey, we get there in the end. So yeah, there you go. Right, so I suppose I guess now I've said all my thoughts. What do you think? By all means, I'm going to be honest here. Vent your frustration out at my ramblings, because I'm sure a lot of you who like this game are going to be like, "What? This guy's a bloody idiot. He knows nothing. He's admitted he's at fault and everything. God, what an idiot! Dislike, 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 dislike." And then loads of horrible comments going, "Oh, you're a fool," or whatever. That's fine. Help yourself to it. I don't mind at all. That's what this is all about. At the end of the day, it's just my opinion. This is just my opinion. I'm not saying I'm God's right or God's right answer or anything. Not, of course not. But this is just my thoughts on it. But we've still got episodes 1 and 2 to play yet. So I might end up revisiting this and expanding on this again. But as Half-Life 2, as a standalone game, after playing it for the first time and finishing it for the first time, yeah, this is what I feel on it and think about it. But overall opinion, going back to the beginning, a fantastic piece of coding, a wonderful game from a technical perspective. But as a plot perspective, if you think about it as a H.P. Lovecraft story, it works. If you think about it as anything else, it's a bit lackluster and not really that good and a bit rushed and lazy. But that's just me. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. If you have, again, please leave all your frustration and dislikes as much as you want. Not that I want you to, but at the same time, freedom of speech and all that. I'd rather you feedback me with that. And I hope to see you. I really hope to see you now, because I'm sure a lot of you are probably put off now. But either way, I hope to see you in another video, and it's either going to be the DLC to Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 1, of course, or something else. I don't know. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. I hope.